Karen Bouchard with Illumify Media Global, and I'm chatting with James Keena. Now, James is an author, speaker, and a champion for freedom, and he has written a number of critically acclaimed articles and books, including his latest novel called 2084, American Apocalypse. And that's what I want to visit with James about today. So James, tell me, why did you write 2084 American Apocalypse?
Well, first, thanks for spending some time with me today, Karen. I really appreciate it. I'm passionate about writing, and I'm passionate about America. And what inspired me to write the book is that I'm very afraid for America. That when you look at the conflicts that we're experiencing today, the tensions in our society, and we've even lost the ability to talk to each other. I think our media is divided up by right and left. People are shouted down in the public square. You're even starting to see some signs of violence emerging in our culture, you know, with Antifa and the Bernie Bros. And even we're seeing a little bit of signs of people wanting to secede. You know, counties are talking about seceding from states. States are talking about seceding from the union. So if you flash forward and take all of those trends out to the year 2084, you arrive at a point where we're at another civil war in America. And that's part of the premise for this novel, is that we've reached that point, that all of today's conflicts have become a future where we're at war with each other. But the book just doesn't say we're at war. What it really does is, through the characters and the story and the plot, it explores how did that happen? And more importantly, how do we get out of this mess? And so at the end, there's some hope for the future with the story.
Now, the title 2084 makes your novel seem related to Orwell's book 1984. Is it? Tell me about that connection.
Well, it is and it isn't. You know, none of the characters are the same. None of the plot is the same. It's not a sequel to that in any way, shape, or form. However, thematically, there is a comparison, because when you look at what Orwell did with his book, he took a very intimate setting, which was a couple called Winston and Julia, and he put them in a socialistic totalitarian setting in England in the year 1984. And what you get out of the novel is the interplay between that very intimate relationship and the overriding social tension and conflict and apocalyptic structure coming from society, and how does that impact that couple in their personal lives. So I've taken a similar theme with 2084, where in America, we're seeing a socialistic totalitarian future in the year 2084. And we have a family that has to deal with that situation. And as we'll probably talk about, they deal with it in a very traumatic way. And so we see, again, just like Orwell's book, that interplay between those catastrophic things happening in society and what's happening to this very intimate family.
So tell me about that family. I mean, you have really compiled an intriguing cast of characters in this book. And you mentioned that family, and the first pages, the scene that we come in and we meet this family, it's a riveting scene where we meet this family. So tell us about that family that you tell their story throughout the pages of your book.
Well, in many ways, it's a normal family. It's a family of four, two parents and two children, but they're in a very abnormal setting. As I mentioned, America's at war in the year 2084. This family lives on a ranch in Kansas. There's no one else around them. Everybody has fled. Our technology has evaporated. Our infrastructure's collapsed. There's no communication with other people. So they're very much alone. And almost like an Amish-like existence, where they're carving out a living as best they can on this isolated ranch. But they're not quite alone, because they're attacked. They're attacked by a paramilitary group that ransacks their home and kidnaps their two children. So the parents are devastated at that point, that they've lost their children. Their home has been destroyed by these forces. They're adrift in the world with no connections and no friends. And now they've got to solve this mystery. Why were my children kidnapped? Where did they go? How do I fight my way through this? What do I do next? It's a very traumatic thing for them.
Wow. I know I want to know more, but you can't tell more, because we can't give away the whole story in the book. But It is. It's very, very gripping, and the characters that they meet along the way are just really fascinating.
But that's part of the fun is that, you know, as their children have been kidnapped, they have to obviously go find them, and they end up in a cross-country journey in the midst of the Civil War. And along the way, just like you would expect, they meet some people who are willing to help, some very courageous and heroic people, and then some very villainous people. And so it becomes a broad collection of a lot of tension, a lot of conflict, a lot of drama.
Wow.
And a lot of mystery. They've got to
A
find
lot of
out.
mystery, right? A lot of mystery. I love it. So who did you write this book for, and why?
Well, first of all, I wrote it for people who like a good mystery, because this is, you know, the core of the story, and the core of the plot is to kidnap children, and the rest of the story evolves around this cross-country journey to find where they are, and the parents have to fight their way through some horrific stuff because they discover along the way that they're part of a much bigger thing than they ever realized, that there are some forces at work in the world that are out to ruin them and ruin many others. And they discover this as they go along. But that's part of the grand mystery, is that there's a lot of twists and turns. So if you like that kind of thing, it's that sort of novel. But it's also a novel where the characters are very tested because they all have to confront this notion of, wow, I didn't expect this. I was living a very peaceful life in my ranch in Kansas. And so that they have that basic question of, you know, in every hero lurks a coward, and every coward lurks a hero, and now which am I going to be? And so the book tests them along the way, and they eventually grow and learn what they're going to be as that goes along. But I also wrote it for people who just like novels of ideas. You know, this is not just a mystery novel. It's a novel that peels back the layers of the onion. How did America get to this point in the year 2084? What impact does it have on real people like this family? And so I exposed the reader to many interesting looks at how that evolved and how do we work our way out of that. Again, there's a hopeful end in all of this.
Wow. After a reader finishes your story and they close the cover on the last page, how will that reader be different? What impact is this going to have, or do you hope that this book has on their lives?
Well, first, I hope they're wildly entertained. I mean, it is a grand story, and it's an epic tale, and there's lots of fun to be had and lots of twists and turns. So I hope they have a lot of fun reading it. But I've read a number of books in my life that just changed me, you know, where you read it and you think, wow, I didn't see the world like this before, and now I see the world differently. And I'd like the reader to feel that way about this book, that as I peel back the layer of the onion as to how we arrived at this point in 2084, I'd like them to understand, wow, I never saw it that way, and I never saw we were really headed that way. And I never even saw the opportunity to get out of it like I see now after having read that book.
So in your own writing, who has inspired you? What writers have inspired you in your writing style?
A lot of them. I have to be very thankful to my mother because when I was a young child, she took me to the library every week. And from the age of 5 onward, I probably read a book a week for my entire life. So I have a wide range of authors that I really love. But first, I love authors that can create an alternative future. And that's what I do with the book 2084, that I'm writing about a future that doesn't exist, so I have to create that. And I was inspired by dystopian writers who could not only create that future, but also create the history that leads to that future, because you got to bridge from the year 2020 to the year 2084, and you got to create an interesting, believable, plausible, fun history out into the future. So I'm inspired by authors who can do that. I was inspired a lot by James Keena, who had a remarkable ability to write historical novels that brought places and people alive. And so, you know, he would take a place somewhere on the planet and start from 5,000 years ago and just generation by generation weave a story. And by the end of it, you thought, I really know that place. I really know those people. I really understand what happened there. And I find that very powerful. I also love authors who can take a big idea and some challenging thoughts and weave it into a novel that's very engaging. And that's really what I've tried to do here with this book. It's a novel of ideas, and it's going to challenge some readers, but it's woven into a novel or a story that's very, very interesting. So when you look at authors like Ayn Rand and The Fountainhead, which is a novel of ideas, but it blends it with some very interesting concepts. Aldous Huxley with Brave New World, even George Orwell's 1984. Powerful ideas, powerful novels. I love the blend of those.
Now, you explain the significance to me of your motto, neither coerce nor be coerced.
Well, thanks for asking that, because it is very important to me. And when you dig deep into the novel, that's really the message that comes out of the novel. And the challenge for humanity, in my opinion, is that this is really the key to peace on earth, because we all have our passions. We all are passionate about our politics, our ideologies, our religions, our cultures. We also, most of us have this instinct to want to impose those things on other people and impose it using the tools and instruments of a society, whether it's governments or institutions. What comes out of that when you've got, in America, for instance, with 330 million people who each have their own ideologies, religions, passions, and desires, if everybody's trying to impose those things on everyone else, all you end up with is chaos and violence. And that's part of the message of the book. And so this neither coerce nor be coerced motto is really a reminder to everyone that you're only you, that yes, you ought to live your life as you see fit, you ought to believe what you believe, you ought to worship how you want to worship, but you ought not to impose that on others. You ought to let them be who they are. And that's really the only path to peace in the world.
You have conflicts that are represented in your book. What are the main conflicts that you talk about in the book?
Well, there's many layers of conflict, which is one of the reasons why I enjoyed writing it, because at the very basic level, like we talked about, there's the conflict of the basic core of the mystery. You know, there's been a kidnapping, the parents have to go find the children. And that alone is a setting for enormous conflict in the book as they go through that epic journey to find their children. At a slightly higher level, there's a civil war going on. There's a whole nother conflict that they're immersed in. And we've got a country that's at war with itself and factions that have become so unbridgeable that they've decided to fight each other. So there's that level of conflict going on. At an even deeper level, there's something called a syndicate. And I don't want to share too much of the story, but there's this powerful group of people who are really pulling the strings of all of these factions and using them as pawns. And so there's something even deeper in the world where very powerful and very rich people have decided they're going to control the fate of humanity. And so that layer of conflict exists in the story. And then at the deepest level in the story is this conflict of humanity with itself. Like I was talking earlier about the concept of coercion, is that we have this instinct to have other people do what we want them to do and to believe as we want them to believe. And all that ever comes out of that is conflict. And so part of the story is describing that conflict on a very personal level.
Wow. Well, James, where can readers find out more about you, learn more about you, and about all of your writings?
I'm launching a brand new website. It's called www.jameskeena.com. And on there, you'll be able to find out everything about me. I've written 3 books, so you'll see descriptions and excerpts of those 3 books on there. You'll also see all of the articles and expositions that I've written. There's some poetry. So I tried to create an environment where everything I've written that is of some meaning and importance is on this website.
Well, that is excellent. And I hope readers or people who are watching the video go and visit your website and see all that you have to offer in all of those areas. But this is great. Congratulations on this book. And I hope that it's so well written. And like you said, the plots and the twists and the turns, it's very, very intriguing. And you grab the reader's attention right from page 1 and you carry it all the way through the end. So it's a fabulous book. And thank you so much. And it was great being able to visit with you about your book here today.
Well, thank you, Karen. And I had a blast writing it. I hope the readers have a blast reading it, and I hope they come away a little bit changed.